This video is an update on where I've got to with the rusty wheel arches on my Honda Accord Aerodeck. I was hoping it was going to be a how-to video, but I should tell you now it's not going to have a neat, clean ending, and that's because it's not neat and clean underneath. Underneath all the filler is just a lot of holes and some panels that have worn quite thin, and it's across more than one panel. The construction of the car here is quite complicated and is going to take longer than I thought. But this may not come as a surprise to you. I know that Frank, one of my most loyal viewers, was suggesting that it would take something like 5 episodes to get through this job, and Frank, I think you're not far off right with that. Anyway, let's get into it. The first thing I had to do was to prepare the car, and that means taking the interior out of the back of the car, removing all the trim and the back seats so that none of it catches fire or melts when I start getting busy with grinding, welding and cutting. Taking the boot carpet up gives me a chance to look at the state of the floor pan, and I'm happy to see that this is in pretty good order. There's no rust in the wheel well or around these seams or anywhere else under here that's visible from the inside, so that's good. Removing trim clips is always a painful experience, although they're not the worst I've found. Some of these round-headed clips have a slot in them and need removing with a screwdriver, and others need taking out with these trim clip removal tools, which are a little bit useless. They're a bit bendy and soft, but at least they don't do too much damage. There's also locating tabs that you have to remove, and then eventually you can fight the panels out, and I think I've done it without doing too much damage. I normally make the mistake of thinking that it's only going to be a week or so before I finish this job, and there's no way I'm going to forget where everything goes back. But luckily I've learned over the years and been sensible and put all the trim clips into little poly bags and labelled them so I know where to put them back again when I put it all back together. Then I need to jack the car up and get an axle stand underneath so that it's nice and secure, which makes it a little bit easier for me to get at everything, including getting under here so that I can undo the mounting brackets for the rear bumper. These towing eyes double as the mounting bolts. This towing eye looks a little bit second-hand, but actually I think that's still quite solid under a bit of surface flaking. A bit of a clean-up and then a repaint will see that through. I don't think I need to remake that. The fog lamps have a solid unbroken wire from the back of the terminal here to all the way through to somewhere inside the car bodywork. So I'm going to cut those and fit a waterproof connector afterwards. With the number plate lights unplugged and a little bit of fiddling to undo the clips at the side, the bumper just pulls off the car. I started out by cutting off these bolts that hold the polyurethane bumper to the brackets. I didn't really need to do that to get it off the car, although ultimately I did need to do it because the bumper brackets themselves have rusted quite badly. You can see how that's just gone. So we'll need to remake the bottom half of that. This side's not quite so bad. I mean, it's equally gone, but it gives me a bit more of a basis for getting the shape right. The back up here is all lovely and rust free. All these edges, that's all lovely, slightly dusty but entirely solid painted metal. Even down here, that's all good. And on this side, see, that's all good. It's just a bit, that's just dirt. And so it's just this edge and up to there and the wheel arch. Except it's not just that edge and the wheel arch. The more I grind away at it with this knot wheel, the more I realise that there's less and less metal and more filler, and that leaves me with 2 problems. The first problem is that I can't use the panels as a template for making new ones because they simply aren't there. The usual cardboard-aided design technique is great for making boxy sections like those bumper brackets, and I'll use it for that. But it's not so much good for this kind of thing because it won't take the shape of the curve. There's a technique you can use using crisscrossed layers of masking tape over the panel, which if you layer them enough, 3 or 4 layers, it should hold the form nicely. But I tried that and it just wasn't working. The trouble is there's no metal for it to stick to. So what I've settled on is this technique instead. I've used some welding rods to make up a wire frame in roughly the shape that I need to get the sheet metal into, and I can use that so that I don't need to keep coming back to the car every 2 minutes just to check whether I'm in roughly the right shape. I've got hold of some of these little neodymium, have I pronounced that right? Neodymium, I don't know, whatever, magnets that will help keep the rods in place once you've ground the filler away, because they don't stick to filler, and then I can just knit them together with a bit of with just a little touch from the MIG welder to make a wire frame. And that'll hold its shape nicely. I've used 3mm mild steel welding rods for this, copper coated. If I had my time again, I'd probably use 2mm, which would be a little bit easier to bend, but I've ordered 100 of the damn things now, so I'm going to make myself suck it up. It's not pretty, particularly some of the welding, but it's good and strong, especially once I've nipped up the dodgy bits on the bench, and it holds the shape perfectly fine. It's not elegant and it's not accurate, but it's going to be good enough to get me reasonably close so that I can get the metal cut to shape and just do the fine tuning. Fine tuning makes it sound delicate. We're talking hammering here to get it to fit nicely onto the car. The metal shaping itself, well, I've invested in some kit. So I've got this sand bag and a bossing mallet, which was a super cheap one off eBay, and it seems to do the job reasonably well, although it's quite lightweight. I think a slightly heavier, better quality one would last longer and be a bit nicer in terms of feel, but this will do for now. And I've got my English wheel. I've done a whole separate video on the English wheel, so I'm not going to talk about that too much here, except to say that if you bash away at the metal with the hammer, then get it into very roughly the right shape, you can finish it off quite elegantly on the wheel and smooth out all the little dents and end up in a fairly good place with a nice compound curve. This end is sort of there or thereabouts now, up to this ridge here. This bit is nowhere near, so I need to just bend that up a bit. I've still got some more work to do to finish that job, so hopefully there'll be a follow-up video reasonably soon if I get a chance to do it over the Christmas break. I mentioned that there were 2 problems. The second of them is that actually the rot's gone into more than one panel. So my dreams of having just a new wheel arch lip and then a bit of metal to join that into the rest of the inner arch were slightly shattered when I found that the bodywork here is actually quite complex. In the middle is the big inner wing panel that forms part of the arch, then the main inner arch bowl. The boot floor is spot welded to both of those, plus a smaller outer boot floor panel. Then there's the outer wing itself, and a strengthening piece that ties it all together to the strut tower. So you end up with a very complicated piece of bodywork. You can see that this whole of this bottom section is holed as well. You see in there? You can certainly see the hole. This floor is okay. It's just the vertical bit. And up here, scraping away all the filler, you can see this separate kind of flange, double skin there. What I have to do next is grind away at the rust here until I get back to clean metal. I'll do that with a flat wheel and a finger sander. These multiple skins and spot welds are a right pain in the arch, so to speak. I really don't want to be cutting away more metal than I absolutely have to, because that'll just introduce new future rust traps. But on the other hand, if I leave any rust behind and seal it in, then it'll just rot away the car from the inside and cause a whole lot more trouble in the future. So that's what I'm working on in a cold shed while you're tucked up at home warm watching YouTube, you lucky thing. If you want to see the story of how I got on shaping metal with Britain's cheapest English wheel, which unsurprisingly is actually a Chinese wheel, then watch this video next. Otherwise, if you've got this far, then I think you might enjoy this video. There's only one way to find out.